All right, friends, welcome back to our motivation mastery, our Monday mindset. We're here for
Hey friends,
an edition of
welcome back to
Ask
our
Me Anything. And Ask Me Anything is a time where we get to come together and look at some of the tough questions that have been posed to, folks like me who have had 20 years of experience working with families, 15 years in the classroom, raised 2 stepchildren to adulthood. I have a 7-year in my household, and I've worked with hundreds of families to support them to have more tools for resilience, more tools for things like mood management and setting limits that stick, and kind of getting everybody on the same page. Some really good and top topics for this Ask Me Anything. We're going to be rolling through several of these because we had over 100 people join our Facebook group in the last month, which is really exciting. It's like exciting to be a part of something that's growing so quickly, and finding out that a lot of folks from all over the world, Australia, London, England, and all kinds of places across the US are having similar struggles and having similar questions. So just straight off the gate, I'm going to start with one from Christine Tang. So she made sure to let us know when she signed up for the Facebook group that one of the things that she's been wanting more support with is this. I'll put it in the comments. She says she has a 7 and a 4-year-old, and the hardest thing about parenting for her right now is having the kids cooperate. And I feel you, Christine. This is one of those things that when we try so hard to get kids on board with things and then they don't cooperate, it can be so hard. And even if you don't want to bribe them, sometimes you end up doing it anyway. And then setting boundaries in general is really hard. If you can relate, just say, I hear you, Christine, in the comments and let us know who's here. Oh, Lee's here. Hey, from Mexico. Welcome with her 3 boys. So good to have you here. Lee just jumped into our year-long immersion, so here, getting some extra credit. So Christine, and those of you who also have questions about cooperation, first thing I always say is, like really embracing the fact that kids, especially 7 and under, are still incredibly egocentric, meaning their perspective is the center of their world. And so it's true, like whatever it is that they're putting their attention on, whatever timeline they have, they tend to be really stubborn about it. And understanding that that's kind of developmentally appropriate, it's like part of how kids are wired when they're young, is already helpful, just to be like, okay, yes, they're on their own timeline. Yes, they're stubborn because that's what's natural. And if you're here, I see 5 folks watching. Say hello. Let us know. Hey, Jessica Hart is here. Hey, Jessica, back from your big road trip, home and connected with us. Good to have you back here. Let us know where you're tuning in from, the ages of your kids, if you haven't introduced yourself yet. Anyway, so just kind of embracing that, yes, kids are on their own timeline because they're wired to be. And this comes back in the teenage years. Jessica knows what I'm talking about. So if you have a child who's like a preteen or just a little bit precocious, maybe even at age 10, it starts to swing back, 10, 11, 12, and especially 13 and older. So knowing that they're going to be on their own timeline means that you coming into their zone or into their space or into their world can be abrupt, and oftentimes they reject it. And in my programs, we talk about a lot of different ways to sort of get kids on board with things like routines and limits and how to solve conflicts and those sorts of things. And so Lee and Jessica are both clients of mine, and we're going to go deeper on this. But just to start with, knowing that there's going to need to sometimes be an attentional transition. What I mean by an intentional transition is that instead of being able to get their attention right away, you should anticipate a 10-second to 5-minute transition. And I know this can be painful because we're trying to GSD, you're trying to get stuff done, right? But knowing that transitions take time, and that part of transitioning kids is often getting into their world first before you invite them into yours, is so helpful. Christine, I'm imagining maybe your kids are really into a kind of toy like Legos or something. what I would invite you to do, and for others, is that if you have a child that you're like trying to get to transition away from a chosen activity like Legos, that you go and sit down with them and pay attention to what they're paying attention to side by side. You're not standing over them. You're not immediately coming and being like, why are you still playing Legos? It's time for dinner. Try sitting down next to them, kind of get involved with them, even for 10 seconds, and see what a difference that can make before you make your requests. So I've got get into your child's world. And if you've taken a motivation workshop with me, this is actually my tip number one. Because when the kids are older, for those of you who are here with children, old, like pre-K and older, they know if you know what they're up to. They know if you know what their interests are. They know if you know, what's important to them. And it's really important for us to withhold any kind of feedback that sounds dismissive, like, oh, you can do that tomorrow, or that's no big deal, or you get another life in the game, what's the big deal? That will literally give them something to push back on, and also they can feel a little betrayed, like, you don't get it, that eye roll that you get when they think we don't get it. So do try to get into their world, maybe show a little understanding. That would be step two. Show some understanding of why this might be hard for them, or why what it is that's kind of keeping them away from wanting to transition. Yeah, so show understanding. Good, good. Okay, nice. Lisa's here from New Mexico with a 3.5 and a 1.5-year-old. Nice, Lisa. Yeah, and with the little ones, Lisa, you're going to be looking at just literally like having to help them find something else to bring their attention to, which you probably saw with your 3.5-year-old when they were as young as your youngest one, because otherwise they're so in their world. You have to sort of like help them redirect their attention by giving them something else to look at. The other thing is make sure you have their full attention before you make a request. Okay, so get their full attention. Really important. Sometimes we call across the house, and then we call across the house again, and then we come put our hands on our hips by the door and being like, why haven't you blah, blah, blah. And they're like, what? You were talking to me? And they might actually be ignoring you on purpose. It's true. And that could be frustrating. However, what a difference it would have made if you had walked across the house and made sure you had their attention before you made the request, and even went a step further and got into their world a little bit. So those are some suggestions there for Christine's question. This is also one that Angela was talking about with power struggles. So I'm going to put Angela's name in here so she can find this later. So Angela, one of the things that we've noticed with power struggles is if we give kids something to push back on, they will. So which ones to engage in and which ones to let go of? Well, there's a bigger question here, which is, does this need to be addressed now within this power struggle dynamic where, like, if you give in, then you've lost the whole war, right? If you lose this battle, you've lost the whole war. Or is this something that you can let it go for now, or maybe give a little concession, but make a note and even say it out loud, depending on how old your child is. Let me see how old Angela's kids are. Make a note and say, you know what? Hey, this time's fine. I'm going to let you go ahead and do this, even though you just were really mean to your sister. However, like we need to chat about this. Like this is not something I'm willing to let go of forever. And then you actually set a time of when you're going to talk about it. That's probably the hardest part that a lot of folks skip, is setting an actual time. It's like, so after dinner, we're going to talk about this, and you can even state your family value right there, because it's really important to me that everyone in the household feels safe and that we solve our problems with our words and not our hands. For example, so being able to kind of on the fly, if you're not sure how to set up, like how to navigate that power struggle, you can always kind of frame it a future conversation instead. And I gave you a little script there that might be helpful. Otherwise, I have a great friend, and I'll tag her in here. She's also a member of our group. For some reason, tags aren't working, so I'm gonna have to go back and tag folks. Um, what she said is, if it's not burning or bleeding, it's gonna, we can let it go. Because she's somebody who really will notice and is very sensitive to when kids are not aligning with expectations, or the kids are stepping out of bounds of sort of the family values. She's so sensitive to it that she could respond to a lot of things, right? Lee is asking particularly for the hitting struggles, right? Okay. So with hitting struggles, I mean, Lee and you and I are going to work on this together, okay? About like having a family plan that the boys know about for when it's going in that direction, and then when it's crossed the line, like what happens next. And we're going to get you to the place where the boys know what that agreement is, and all you need to do is say like, okay, guys, and then they know that means we need to walk away from each other until lids are back on. So we'll get there in our work together. In the meantime, I can't wait for the family plan. Well, just knowing that that exists is already like half the battle, right? Like that you can actually make a plan for what happens when. One of the things you can do in the moment is since hitting is, I would put that in the red zone of behavior. Then maybe the next step would be that you can express your words, but you can't use your hands. And so we could say, oh, hey, can you guys use your words, or do you need to take a break? And it can just be that quick, and see if they can course correct. And if they can't, then you need to intervene and actually say, all right, friends, time to, all right, guys, time to take a break. You got to go to your corners or whatever your spots. So getting a sense of like when to get involved. I feel like establishing for the family what is in the red zone, which is a tool we'll use, Lee, in the immersion, red, yellow, green zone. By the way, if you don't know what the immersion is and you're really curious, let me throw up a link so you know, because we have just a few spots left in this cohort, and we really kick things off full on July 10th. Again, this immersion, Family Foundations immersion kicks off on July 10th. So if like a year of mentorship and hanging with great families like Lee and Sarah, who's been really active, Brandy this last month, Judy and Chris and all these other folks who are Elise and Elizabeth, Elizabeth just graduated, Tiffany, and doing a year together of like, community and support. If that lights you up, you've got to let me know, okay? Got to let me know. So go ahead and click on that, check it out, and there's a spot where you can book a conversation with me, okay? Yeah, and Lee just hopped in, and we had a weekend session for the early birds to kind of start diving in. Brandy's here, yay, Brandy. Oh, I'm glad you're ecstatic to have joined, yay. Yeah, so living in the red zone these days is really tricky. I think even just having a conversation of like, what is across that line? And what are some things we could do instead that aren't necessarily moving them from red to green, but maybe red to yellow? It's because sometimes I think what we want them to do is just have a full stop, and we kind of ask them to make this leap, when really what we need them to do is like take the first step to, improvement. And so, Lee, I wonder what would be a step between hitting and not hitting, or like hitting and solving problems peacefully. Kind of feels like what the leap is, like hitting, peaceful solving. Maybe it's when we notice that people are starting to put their hands on each other or yelling at each other, we walk away and ask for help before we come back. Could be like a little plan where it's not the same as being able to peacefully solve your problem on your own, but you kind of have this agreement of like, maybe they do this thing where they put their hands behind their back, close their lips, and walk away. There's a whole piece that we can talk about sort of how to deal with anger in a way that's not going to harm others. Because yeah, hitting is on the other side of the line. I can tell it's something that you really want to curb. So maybe it's sitting down to have that conversation with them, even like over dinner, and being like, boys, I'm really concerned about all the hitting. We got to get to the other side of this. We're not asking you to not be mad at each other. We're not asking you to have a solution right away, but we are asking you to put your hands down, close your mouth, and walk away, and we're going to start doing that and helping each other, remind each other about that. So I hope that's helpful, Lee, as a place to start. And we can jam more about that, of course. I've got a few more questions here, quite a few that I'm going to keep rolling through. So we've got, this is Augusta Crenshaw. And then we have, let's see who else asked this question. It is Karen Guo and Patty Nethercott. So they all want to know what to do when their child is upset and has huge tantrums. So good. So glad you're asking. Let's put these in the comments so that you can find it, friends. So what do you do when you're upset, when your child's upset and has a huge tantrum? Well, first of all, you should know about something called mirror neurons. Some of you who have been studying with me this past month in the calm down strategies and the meltdowns workshop, and who have been with me for a while, know that I'm a big fan of being aware of mirror neurons. So if your child is upset and having a huge tantrum, their lid is flipping, guess what? Our lids tend to flip too, because we tend to mirror them. And then guess what? They get more upset, we get more upset, and it just escalates. So it could be like a little upset, more upset, boom, 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 boom. And we kind of flip our lids. If you want to know more about this, we teach it in the immersion too, how to use this metaphor. But thinking about this, this piece, knowing that how your nervous system is running is absolutely going to influence their ability to regulate themselves. And so knowing about mirror neurons is helpful in knowing how to do something called co-regulation. Co-regulation, it's really important that we become incredibly adept at down-regulating. So, and tuning and noticing and catching when we start to blow. And having our own calm down strategies or go-tos. I would suggest, I know Patty's already collected a bunch of tools because she came to most of the 6 days last week or 2 weeks ago. And by the way, she tuned in when she was in the hospital giving birth. She's like, I don't know if I'll be able to comment because I'm giving birth right now. So talk about a dedicated mom wanting to fill her toolbox, Patty. give her some love in the comments here. So amazing. Patty's like, yeah, just blew my mind this month. And a lot of us were just like, wow, okay, you did it, hun. So you might check out the post that's at the top, pinned to the top of the group. I'll pull up the links just so it's easier for you to find. I went ahead and left up the first video of the 6-week training. And it has the 6 breathing tools in it. It's just the watch party, but it has all the parts of the training. So if you're listening to, I want to review it if you haven't watched it yet, or if you go ahead, like I know someone who's new here today. Let's see, is Lisa Giles. I don't think you came to this one. You can go ahead and head over there. And what I would say to anyone who would like to know what to do when your child is upset and having a huge tantrum, the first thing I invite you to do is really figure out where your own lid is, how upset you are, and grab a calm down tool for yourself. I don't think you can having a huge tantrum. This sound off. Go grab a calm down tool for yourself, because not only will you be able to function better and have more tools and strategies and sort of just patience for their big upset, but you'll also get to model something that your kids could possibly use. Now, I know that Lee went home and modeled the roller coaster breath, which is one of the tools in that training that's up until, I think it's up until Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. I know some others, someone tuned in and said, you know, it's really the balloon breath that makes the difference, when they can fill up as big as it can and then let it out really slowly, or sometimes in a funny way, like it can help the kids lighten up because it's such a fun metaphor, like being a big balloon, but it also helps them to slow down because they want to fill up as big as they can and let out as slowly as they can. Those kinds of tools, when you use them too, can also help your kids navigate their own upsets and their own emotions. So that can be a huge help. Let's see. Oh, and for some reason, some of my comments didn't come through. Okay, so I'll copy that in again for these folks to be able to find it. Yeah, I'll put that in. Patty's amazing. She'll be tagged here. Hopefully she'll see the earlier parts too. So let's see, what else? We've got, One other thing I could say about being in the middle of a tantrum, besides keeping your own lid on so that you can do that co-regulation, is that it's also really important for us to really see, like, become like what I call a lid detector. For those of you who've been studying with me now, get a sense of like, how far is their lid off? Like, how far gone are they? Because if we try to talk to a child whose lid is totally off, as if they had their full mental facilities, we're not going to get very far. So if a kid is screaming, I mean, you're probably only going to get in two to five words. If they're hitting and thrashing, same thing. As a matter of fact, acting swiftly might be the only thing you can do besides saying a soothing word or two, like, "It's okay, hon, here we go," and you take them to another place. "Sweetheart, I hear you. Let's get you. Let's get you more comfortable." Like, sometimes a kid will melt down because their clothes are uncomfortable. Whatever the situation might be, like, take some action if you need to. Sometimes taking action can be also to give space and be like, I hear you, honey. I know you're super upset. And I'll be over here when you're ready. That's especially a helpful one when the reason they're having a tantrum and the reason they're having a meltdown is because they don't like what you just did. Like, take their toy away, or tell them to go ahead and leave the dinner table because they didn't listen to something you said 3 times. Oftentimes it's like just letting them know, like, "Yep, I hear you. I'll come and check on you in a little bit, or you can come find me when you're ready." Excuse me, kind of give it back to them a little bit. So it's not always possible, in other words, to guide them through with a calm down tool, although you can definitely suggest it. Sometimes you have to act swiftly or give space. And then another thing is, like, really noticing if their lid is starting to come back on. That's when you can start to do things to sort of help them give their brain a hug by letting the upstairs brain hug the downstairs brain, and really encourage them then to start doing some soothing tools that help them to calm down. So that's like a very short version of my 2-hour meltdowns workshop. And let me know if there's more you'd like on that, and also check out videos we have. This is also a great time to mention that if you're up against some of these challenges and really feeling stuck, we have our immersion starting, but maybe you're not sure if that's really what you're interested in. There's also a way for you to get on my calendar by taking something called the Parent Discovery Quiz. And this quiz is for you if you just feel like, wow, Vanessa, a lot of these topics speak to me, and I'd like some more support, and I want to get a little more clear on what to focus on. I know that Brandy took it, and Lee took it, who are here, and so many members of Jessica took it, who's also here. You guys, friends, go ahead and encourage folks in the comments if you like about what it was like to take the quiz and how helpful it can be to have strategy session with yours truly, to get some clarity. So you'll want to go ahead and do that, and you can apply for a session. I just opened up a bunch of spots this week to serve folks, and also explore if it would be a good fit for us to work together with no obligation, of course. All right, another topic we've got is from, good, all right, Noel, I think it's Noelle, Rachel, one of our immersion members. And when she joined the Facebook group, she's like, she wanted me to know what she needed. Oh, you're welcome, Brandy. Yeah. So we've got Noelle. Let's see if it'll let me tag this time. For some reason, it's still not letting me. So that's a little bit of a bummer, because usually that's how people find it, but I can come back and try again later. How do I set and keep healthy boundaries and limits even when exhausted? That's where that plan that we talked to, Lee was excited to make with me, really comes in handy, because like anything, if you're making it up in the moment, that takes a certain amount of bandwidth, certain kind of resources that need to be available for you to even access what might be helpful. So especially for things that keep recurring, like health, like a boundary about whether or not they respect your personal space bubble and stop when you tell them to stop touching your body, like pinching or touching and that sort of thing. Maybe it's something like not bothering their sibling when their sibling's trying to take a nap. If it's something that's recurring, you can absolutely take a little time out for what we would call like time out for training. It's a Jane Nelson phrase that's really stuck with me. Here's an example. I have been in a situation where I'm a guest teacher, like helping out another teacher's classroom, and they don't have a lot of rapport with me. Like we haven't set up a lot of the rules together. A lot of you feel like this just depending on the day. It's like you never told them that they're not allowed to get ice cream out on their own because they're just doing it. So anytime that it feels like, they're really not on board with the limits and expectations, you can do what I did. So anyway, so I found myself in this situation where I was helping out, and the kids, when they hit the yard, were just totally misusing the slide, climbing up the slide when people are trying to come down. There are all these crashes, and kids just not going down the slide. They just sit at the top, and it was just a mess. And the kids were screaming about it. The kids were getting fights, and these were about 4 or 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. And I found myself doing what we all do without, having another plan in place, is I would just give reminders. I'm like, hey, could you remember you're supposed to go down the slide, not up the slide? Hey, as soon as you get to the top slide, you want to go because look at your friend, they're waiting, they're still waiting, and you start to hear your voice shift to that nagging place or that managing place. And then after repeating 3 or 4 times, you start to figure out, feel like, now I need to get more serious. So I started to get more stern. Like, if you go up the slide one more time, slide's going to be closed for you, or you'll have to come sit next to me until you're ready to follow the rules. Well, that's fine if it's one kid one time, but if it just kept happening. There were like 7 kids who weren't following the rules and everything. By the time I was done with recess, giving consequences, having kids walk away, to giving reminders, I was exhausted. So even what might have gotten you there in the first place when you're exhausted, Noelle and Rachel and Natasha, is the fact that you had to give so many reminders of what the boundaries were or the limits. Well, however you got to that moment, here's what I recommend. Take some time out for training. Like, just make a note. Okay, these kids need a lesson basically on the rules for how to use the slide, because clearly we're not all on the same page here. So I got the kids to come and make a circle around the slide. And I asked the older kids, what are some things we know about how to use a slide safely? So stating the goal. And then one kid raised their hand. We always go down the slide, not up the slide. I'm like, that's right. Could you show us how? And everybody watched the kid go up the ladder and said, oh, look, they're going up the ladder. Are they going up the slide? No. I said, oh, look, they're going down the slide. Are they going up the slide? No. Okay, so we only go up the ladder and down the slide. Is that right? Yeah. Wait, what do? We go up the what? Ladder. Okay. And we go down the what? Slide. Okay. Do we go up the slide? No, we don't. Okay, great. And I said, does anybody have an idea what happens if you go up the slide? And someone goes, you crash, right? And so we just rolled through. I'm not going to give you the entire lesson because you can see how it would possibly go. And then I gave them a preview of what would happen. I said, okay, so friends, here's the deal. This is such a safety thing, and someone could really get hurt, that if I see you going up the slide, I'll just come gently give you one reminder. But then if you do it again, then the slide will be closed for you for the rest of the day. Got it? Got it. What will happen? You'll give a reminder and then slide will be closed if we do it again. That's right. Okay. Fast forward to the next recess. So much better. Now, there were still 3 kids who were ignoring the rules. This might be your kid. And doing it, and had to go through the round of having that sort of consequence at the end, where I was gave them the reminder, and I was like, it's your choice. If you'd like to be able to go on the slide today, you need to go up the ladder and down the slide, not go up the slide. They said, okay, got it. But then they did it again. I was like, okay, slide closed. And they're like, you're so mean. One of them was so mad. And I was just like, yeah, oh, I know it can be hard when you don't make a choice that you like. And you can even get mad at other people. Just sort of gave it back to the child. And the other 2 kids totally got it. They skipped away. And then I made sure to review the rules with them, those 3 kids, before we went on the yard again. Well, by the end of the week, almost the entire recess, everybody used the slide properly, and I didn't lose my voice trying to give 25 reminders. So there's just a little story as an example that we can set up limits and expectations, that especially the ones that are not going as smoothly. And I'm thinking of you, Lee, with the hitting. This is not this is kind of a similar conversation you can have with them about well, what are we going to do instead? Okay, we're going to put our hands down, close our mouths, and walk away. and come back to it later or get some help solving the problem. So just to feel into like the opportunity to take some time out for training and kind of get ahead of the problem for next time. We're not always able to kind of intervene successfully in the moment. Can that be true? Yeah. Yeah. Let's see, open this door. Got a little puppy trying to come in. It's done sunbathing. And then I have a really interesting one from Nancy and Carolina, which is wanting to get on the same page as a blended family. And that's a tricky one. I know from being I grew up in a blended family, and then I joined a blended family. And right now I'm living in a household with someone with my the 7-year-old in my household has a second household. And so I know about the family and blended family thing. And what I can tell you is that one of the things that really helps get all adults and caregivers on the same page is to find some common ground about your values or goals for the kids. Like, we'd really love our the children in our care to learn about how to respect others, especially personal space, the personal space of others. You kind of set a specific goal. Okay, what are some things we've tried? Start there. Because oftentimes there are things you've tried that have worked, but you just haven't quite like put them into place as like how the group or even the caregiver is going to respond. So what is our goal? What have we tried? What would we like to try next that we can all get behind? Sometimes if you pick like one thing at a time, it's a great way to ease into having more robust kind of family meetings or caregiver meetings. And quite honestly, sometimes you need a third party. And I'd say about 1 out of 3 families who join my program, maybe more like half. Part of the reason why they end up joining a program or working with a mentor, whether it's with me or someone else, is so that you already have that on the calendar. Like, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk through what is our plan for when the kids spit at the table. What is our plan for when they're rude to grandma? What is our plan? And they come up with it and they roll away with some support, right? Also happens in the trainings all the time. In the Q&As, I know Lee was there this Saturday getting some support and probably walked away with some specifics that, because both you and Sergio were there, you kind of got to be on the same page without even too much effort. Kind of like drinking from the same well or learning to speak the same language, right? Lots of thumbs up on that one. I'm glad you're feeling that, friends. Good, good, good. So I would say pick something that you are willing to start having that conversation about, so that, it's kind of a way in. And don't always pick the hardest thing. Sometimes pick something that's even a little bit like light and funny, particularly if you think it's going to be a little more challenging. Like, maybe it's a little bit silly and cute and funny that your kid like misses their face a lot when they try to feed themselves, and it just sort of and so maybe it's like well, how do we get our child to like wash their face after dinner? And it's just sort of a low stakes, everybody's kind of on board with the goal. It's not like, how much screen time should the kid have during the summer, which could be a lot more contentious. Maybe work up to that would be my other tip. Get some practice under your belt with having a conversation first, and having some success sort of following through. Like, okay, so how we're going to respond is, as soon as they get excused from the table, we're going to go like this, to remind her to wash her face. And if she refuses, then we'll just be really firm about washing your hands and face happens first. Yeah, it's okay. You can sit in this chair till you're ready. We're like, whenever you're ready, but you can't get up from the table until you're ready to go wash your face. Yeah, I definitely can't touch the furniture and the toys with your fingers like that. Yeah, and even just kind of make it silly and be like, would you like me to come with you? We can make some bubbles. Maybe we could sing a song while we're in there, or just kind of scoop them up and fly them over there if they're little, for example. I got another one that's a couple more that are about emotional mastery. I'm going to put them all in at the same time so we can see them. And the reason I'm doing that is because they're also connected and they're kind of similar to some of the earlier stuff. So we've got Shayna and Maureen here. I'm kind of answering some of your questions, but you'll want to go back to the beginning and listen to the whole thing, because we talked about co-regulation. We talked about mirror neurons. We talked about, you know, kind of becoming a lid detector to see like how far is my kid's lid off. We've also talked about sort of different cool down strategies for yourself and for the kids. And I even put a link in so that you can also check out the first breathing tools part of the training that I'm leaving up until Wednesday. So I want to make sure that Lisa and Tracy and other folks who are maybe tuning in at this spot, because your name is tagged here, you see the whole thing. So building off of this, what I can say about remaining calm when your child is upset is something I could add to the conversation we've already had, and maybe Lee and Brandy, this is part of your learning too, is maybe chime in here from what you learned with me this last month already. Some suggestions you have, like maybe some tools that have worked for you, or some of the thoughts you might want to share with these folks. Okay, we can crowdsource here, work together. So finding your right fit calm down tool can take some exploration, and also some practice. Like, I wasn't always good at taking breaths, and now it is one of my go-tos. I actually have a tendency to hold my breath when I'm trying to concentrate or try to like keep it together. I'm pretty sure it's something I learned from my parents, my parental units. Not to mention which one, but one in particular, she would get really stern and really tight and hold her breath, and then unleash something pretty harsh. So I think, you know, being open to finding out which of the tools work best for you. And if you didn't get the guide yet, make sure you do. Let me see if I can pull a link up for you to get that real easily here. Yeah, I should be able to pull one up, because I want you to have options. Yeah, like 6 strategies that you can choose from. And then within those options are even more options. I personally find that a breathing tool and some positive self-talk is really, really helpful. Here's where you get your guide, okay? It's the same one that everybody got who signed up for the 6-day challenge, or the 6-day series last 2 weeks ago. Yeah, so Lee, if you hold your breath too, breathing, actually building in breathing is going to be so helpful, really, really helpful. And it can just be like, you know, one roller coaster breath, you know, whenever you catch yourself sort of getting really stressed out or amped up, right? And a tip I have for you, Lee, since you're here, is that when you have low energy, do it quickly. Because what it actually does is it brings more energy into your body, and then it also kind of gets you to like your heart rate up a little bit, which is not necessarily a bad thing if you're feeling low energy. And then it can encourage you to keep breathing. So like, something like that. And it actually kind of gets you like a little like kind of high feeling, because you have so much great oxygenated blood like rushing to your brain, and you're kind of like, woo, that's great. We do some more kind of energy boosting exercises with Coach Crystal in a few months too, Lee. So we're looking forward to that with her in the immersion program. Brandy really liked the breathing, the roller coaster breath, and the rose, smell the rose, blow out the candle. Was another one you really liked, Brandy. Nice. And then also movement is so great. There's this phrase I love to remind us all, like, you got to move it or you're going to lose it. Or just like, even remember in the middle of our training on Saturday, Brandy and Lee and any other immersion folks who who got that bonus training, you know, we did that little movement for about 5 minutes before, 5 to 8 minutes before we started our second half. And I don't know about you, but I felt more like enlivened and more at ease and less stressed about the time, and it just felt really good. So move it or lose it, and do that like tense and release. The star pose is when you scrunch yourself as small as possible and then explode like a star. So you go squeeze, squeeze, like, scrunch, 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 crunch, and then boom, like a star. And I've definitely had toddlers love that one, toddlers and preschoolers. And then older kids will think it's hilarious when you do it. So you can get out of that stress response and into play, Brandy. So good. I love it. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Okay. So those are just some recap reminders of like ways to find your calm in the moment, is to like move your body, use your breath. I also personally like the self-talk too, where you can just, do a little emotion coaching for yourself. And those of you who've been in my world for a while know I'm a big fan of emotion coaching because of how powerful it can be. Let's see. Lisa and Tracy are both wanting to help kids who manage their anxiety. Let me take a look at what ages your kids are before I advise, because this is pretty age specific. Let's see. So Tracy is saying, yeah, a 10-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. Oh, they get a lot of pushback. Yeah. Oof, from the things that you're trying to do to help them manage their anxiety, like diet modifications, like tutoring, kind of reading and spelling programs. I hear you, Tracy. That's tough because it's helpful, and yet they're not getting on board. So I feel you on that. And I'll speak to that in a moment. For Lisa, your child is 4.5. Got it. Okay. So what I would say to, let's start with Lisa with your 4.5-year-old. Anxiety is a special emotion. Kind of anxiety and depression are the top two that plague teens and just people in general, like generalized anxiety or generalized depression. And they're kind of on different ends of the sort of nervous system scale, right? So depression is like often kind of downregulated and anxiety is kind of upregulated. And we want to like come to the middle. So some of the things we've been talking about with like bring your energy up can really help with the depression piece. And for anxiety, it can help us get some of the energy out, but then often what happens next is whatever triggered the fear response just comes, like the kid gets back into contact with it, and it can bring all those emotions back. And so then you're kind of on a hamster wheel. So one of the things that has helped a lot of my clients when they're trying to guide their kids with anxiety for young kids is to have okay, I'm back, is to have limited and gradated exposure to the anxiety making trigger. So whether it's spiders or the dark or going to a new environment, and maybe somebody's dog, right? That if your child tends to run anxious, which by the way ran really strong in my blended family that I joined, 2 out of the 3 family members had a lot of anxiety. So one of the things that really helps kids is to have these like limited brief exposures that are kind of gradated to longer exposure or like mirror exposure over time with their consent and in a sense of safety. So here's a great example. I had a client whose child was about to start swimming lessons, but they were really scared of getting in the pool. And I said, okay, well, how many days do you have? She goes, I have the weekend. I was like, all right, okay. It's a little bit of a short time frame, but let's do this. First, the thing they did, I said, tonight, like right away, as soon as you get off the call, as soon as you pick up your kid, just drive by the pool and just park out front for like 5 minutes tops, okay? Maybe 2 minutes. And just preview for them, like again, limited exposure from a really big distance, right? And be like, this is the pool that we're gonna go to on Monday for camp. What do you see? Can you see the water? Oh yeah, it's an outdoor pool. Look at that. Oh look, they have a fun slide and stuff. Okay, got it. Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll walk through this door. Mommy will stay with you for the whole first class. I won't go anywhere. I'll be with you the whole time. And the only thing that I'm going to ask you to do is get into the pool at least once. So all this previewing. Okay, got it. Yeah. And then the next day, you can take a picture. Next day, show them the picture. Okay, so in 2 days, we're going to go to the pool. And since I'm thinking more maybe for Tracy, who has older kids, because you can do this with younger kids too. So kind of right in the middle there. Look at this picture, we're going to go here, and then let them see if there's anything that they say that they're scared of or worried about. And then you take out their swim gear and being like, which swimsuit do you want to wear? And like, oh, you'll have your goggles. Let's try them on. Let's see how they feel. So you're just sort of exposing them to the different things and different equipment. And then the day before, she decided, because she kind of read how her daughter was doing with it, she decided to actually drive over there and during the time that the pool hours were open, and ask permission at the desk, like, would it be okay if we just did a little walk around and we'll come right back out? We won't even get in the water. And they're like, of course. So they brought her in and just had her like walk up as far as she would walk, and then carried her the rest of the way as close as she could to the pool without her daughter having a total meltdown. Just to her threshold of like, she's a little nervous, but she's not quite upset. And then just watch the other kids swim for a little bit. And just making some noticing like, oh, see, it looks like that kid is holding on to the side of the pool because they're not quite ready to get all the way in. That kid's sitting on the side of the pool. That kid's all the way in, but it's not quite ready to let go of the side. And just sort of previewing, like showing them that there's options, because I think what your mind makes up about what the experience is going to be like is usually much worse than the reality, especially if it's something that's kid friendly, like kid designed, swimming classes. Well, turns out, Monday comes around, and it was true that her daughter didn't want her to leave and didn't want to get in more than once, but she did. She went from sitting on the side to going all the way in, holding onto the edge, and then with the instructor right there to help. Another thing I would have done if it was possible, would be to like meet the lifeguard who's going to be there and the instructor ahead of time. Like whatever you can do to build an exposure, it can be really, really, really helpful. And this is not like a cure-all, end-all to all anxiety, but I think particularly for episodal anxiety, when it's related to a particular trigger, there's so much we can do to support their nervous systems going into the anxiety provoking situation. So yeah, hopefully some of that was helpful as well for anxiety. And fear is often about control also. So I like to give kids a lot of choice without overwhelming them, like not 5 choices, but just sort of 2 choices. Like, would you like me to carry you to the edge of the pool, or would you like to walk? Oh, you'd like me to carry you? Okay. Do you want to sit on my lap first, or are you ready to sit on the side of the pool on your own? Oh, okay. You ready to sit on the side on your own? Oh, great. Wow, look at you. You're really making strides here. Yeah. Notice I'm breaking into small steps too. I'm not just like, I'll say it's good when you get all the way in, you better get in there. It's a lot more kind, but it's still moving towards that edge of what their comfort zone is with support. I think that's the key. It's with support. Yeah. Brandy says she studied neuroscience and behavior, and you totally vouch for this skill. Yep. Slowly introduce the perceived threat and safety with baby steps first over time. So good. And there's more that she wrote here. Those of you should all check it out. Yeah, absolutely. Really good notes, Brandy. Brandy's such a contributor. I love how much you share in the comments. If you're tuning in and you haven't yet said hello, let us know that you're here. This is now, I'm opening it up for the next 10 minutes or so to anybody who has some new questions, something that maybe I didn't cover yet. Go ahead and put your question in the chat, okay? Let's see. Otherwise, I'm going to talk about Mika's question. Even though it's a recap, it's worth hearing more than once. So Mika says, how do I help my 6-year-old daughter in managing her big emotions? Yeah, so when we want to think of like managing big emotions in the bigger picture, we want to approach it really comprehensively. So we've mostly talked about what to do in the moment. But just like we were building in tools for ourselves to use on the regular, we want to do that for our kids too, by helping them learn mindfulness practices and things that they can do on the regular to sort of build up their mindfulness muscles, so to speak. For example, you could bring in breathing tools into the bath time where you make bubbles and then blow them off, right? And then you could kind of like smell the flower and blow the bubbles or something, right? Or smell the roses and then scoop up the bubbles and blow the bubbles. Just practice it several times. And I'm going to check out how old your kids are. So I can just get a sense of, oh, you said 6-year-old. Yeah. Mostly your 6-year-old wanting support with that. Okay. So yeah, I could see that being like a fun way to build it in as an example. Finding other times to build in, like maybe there's, hey, Jennifer, glad you're here. Maybe there's times where you know that there could be a power struggle, but then you build in a little bit of tense and release like activity that would be like kind of helping them, kind of like transition, doing some exploding stars before that you then ask them to zoom around the room and pick up everything off the floor. Could be a way to kind of shift things there. I'm trying to think of other examples. I think 2 is probably good to start with, Mika. So building in some of these strategies in everyday life is so helpful. I know Jennifer, who's been hanging with me for over a year now, checking out our events and got to go to one of our retreats last year or earlier this year, knows about like creating a calm down space too. Several of my clients, actually most of my clients, will end up making one within the year of working with me, especially if they have young kids. I'm talking like 12 and under. It doesn't even have to be like 5 and 6-year-olds. But creating some kind of space where there are prompts to be calmer. We built one in my household. I'll see if I can pull up the photo. And one of the things I noticed right away is that, we can offer options. We can say, would you like to go to your room or to the calm down corner? And when given the option, she'll often pick the calm down corner, or she'll pick her room. But like having a choice of where she can stomp away to with her anger, it can be really helpful. And one of the things she ended up loving that we had kind of forgot that she was really into was bubbles. Like blowing bubbles was really calming. And guess what it does? It gets her to breathe. And also gets her to go outside or to go up to the window where some fresh air was and there's some trees and stuff, and she can try blowing it out the window and watching them float away. And just having something simple like 3 to 5 things in a designated place and practice using it can make such a big difference as well. So Mika, and those of you who want to know what to do with kids who have big emotions, those are some hot tips I have. And I'm going to close with this. If there are no new questions, and Jennifer, maybe you have one, Jennifer LH, let us know if you do, put it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and share this. This is something that came out of our 6-day series that I just think is so fun. So 5 different ways to calm down an upset child can be so helpful to have. We talked about finding your own calm. We talked about offering a soothing strategy. And in the earlier part, we talked about showing understanding when it came to getting into their world a bit, like getting them to transition. For example, from Legos to dinner, we might say, oh, I know. I was like, you were just about to build the second half of that. I get it. It's so hard to pause sometimes. Well, how about if we save it right here so you don't lose your spot? You made a collection. Let's put it on this little tray or something. And I'll save it up here so your little brother can't touch it because I know you're worried that he's going to finish dinner first and come mess it up. I mean, that's just so much understanding, right? Of like why he's like pushing back and not wanting to come to dinner. If they're upset and they're crying, you can always let them know, like you see their tears and you feel like really feel that, oh, like it's so hard to see you so hurt, honey. Also the fear part too, without indulging it too much though, but you could say something like, well, of course it's a little scary. You don't really know much about it yet. Like you haven't really checked it out yet. It's not something you don't know much about. Yeah, that would be a little scary. And then you can say, well, good news that good thing that we can go check it out before we have to get in the pool. Like that swimming example. Name it to tame it is like a coin from Dr. Daniel Siegel. He says, if you can name the emotion, it starts to let your upstairs brain give your downstairs brain a little bit of a hug. In other words, you start to engage your higher order thinking and even shift. And I experience it as shifting into the observer mode where you start to say, oh, I'm experiencing sadness, instead of like, it's so sad. You just shift and you're like, it's okay to be sad. And you kind of can start coaching yourself through it once you name the emotion. And the last one here, tuning into the body. Bringing attention to all sensations with all 5 senses. It'd be such a great way to give yourself a little bit of a break, a nourishing pause, as author of Pause, Rachel O'Mara, would call it, to be able to have more resources to bring to the table. Because oftentimes, even we'll know the better thing to do, or like I always say, you know, there's this like this acute frustration of knowing what to do, but then not being able to access that in the moment. Jennifer, I know we've talked about this before. So it's like when you when you're like in the moment and you know you're supposed to offer choice something, but you can't remember that it's choices, and you're just like, oh. So giving yourself a moment to just put your lid back on so that you will remember what to do, and not putting pressure on yourself to have the answer right away, can sometimes be that key that kind of turns things and unlocks that toolbox for you. So building in that pause, giving yourself a little moment to tune into something, whether it's your own breathing or your senses of what's in your environment, like even just naming some colors around you. That also helps kids because it redirects their attention away from the thing that's upsetting them, and then lets them kind of recover and then come back with more to bring to solve the problem. All right, friends, what a lovely time I've had with you. Like I was mentioning, we have a few spots left in our immersion for July. Now, some of you have already hopped in who are here today. Congratulations and securing a whole year of mentorship for yourselves. Some of you are still thinking about it or want to check it out, never heard of it before. So I went ahead and put the link to the website that shares all the information you need about it. And we're in the position to give a significant discount because we're not doing live in-person retreats right now. And so we're doing them virtually. And then also because we understand that COVID presents some very special challenges financially, we're trying to make it really easy for folks to get started with a lower, sort of a down payment on a payment plan and other creative options. So if this is something that you even want to, check out and consider, go ahead and book a call with me. I opened up a lot of time on my schedule. You can also, like Brandy was saying, was such a great experience. You can take the quiz. Jessica Hart also was sharing, one of my clients here, that it was such a great experience to take the quiz. Jennifer, I know you've taken it before, but if you wanted to take it again and see what your answers have changed. I know we talked through it verbally, but yeah, I know that you and Scott were just thinking of like, well, if we can't make it to every training, but we still get a ton out of the year, would it be worth it? So I know that's something that we kind of left up in the air. If you wanted to kind of lean back in and book something, you might click on the immersion website and check it out and just book straight into my calendar there. If you're seriously looking at the immersion for this year. So now that we have Lee in our program, we've got Brandy in our program, Jessica Hart and I have been working as in a private intensive, really helping her have breakthroughs. If any of that is interesting to you, please make sure you let me know, because we're going to be closing up enrollment pretty soon here, as soon as our programs are full. Lots of love to you all. Congratulations for making time for this in your calendar today. Those of you who are listening to the replay, just know that there are more Ask Me Anythings coming up. So put your question up into a post in the group, personal message me, let me know that you have one that you'd like, put it in the comments here, and I will support you in our next one. We're taking a week off next week, but we'll be back in 2 weeks, and I'll be sharing some great interviews with all of you instead, so you can catch up on those if you didn't catch them the first time around. Lots of love to you all. Bye, Brandy. Bye, Lee. Take good care, everybody, and I'll see you next time.